So I finally finished Five Nights at Freddy Security Breach, and if I'm being honest, it took me a little bit longer than I was expecting, so sorry that this video is a little bit late. It's taken me days to go through this game, to finish it, to finish the campaign, get some of the endings, and find some of the secrets, which there are quite a lot of secrets hidden in this game. And I'm sure there are plenty more that I haven't got yet. But with that being said, this video has actually taken a lot of energy out of me, so I am, this time, going to ask if you do enjoy the video, please give it a like, it really helps out the channel, and after all, it is Christmas. But there will be spoilers in this video for Five Nights at Freddy Security Breach, so if you haven't played it or if you want to avoid spoilers, this is your one and only warning. Now get ready for 10 things you might have missed in Five Nights at Freddy Security Breach. Number 10, messages in binary. So a couple of parts throughout the game, but particularly in this room, we can find a number of messages that are written in binary. I'm sure at least some of you found these messages and instantly recognized them as binary. After all, they are ones and zeros, and that's what binary is made up of. But I actually went and translated these, and I could find 2 separate messages. If you found any more, let me know down in the comments, but I could only find these 2. When translated, one just says the word hide, which, let's be honest, isn't that unexpected for this type of game. The second one, however, is a little bit more interesting. This one spells out the words, "Why is I?" which has at least 2 different interpretations. It's possible that this is grammatically incorrect. For example, "Why is I alive?" And there could be a reason for this grammatical error, which I'll get onto in a minute. But it's also possible that this is an incomplete letter. Somebody was writing a note, but they got cut off for some reason. It could be, for example, "Why is it? Why is it following me? Why is it attacking me? Why is it so goddamn scary?" as an example. But if this is a grammatical error, that would kind of make sense, since I think the game is heavily implying that this was written by some sort of animatronic or digital entity. After all, binary is something that's more used for computers than humans. I mean, unless you're a massive nerd, you don't generally speak in binary. So the fact that this is in binary to me really implies that this was either an animatronic or some other form of digital entity, and we know that there are some characters in this series that are at least implied to be in a sort of digital form. So who wrote this? Honestly, I don't know. I don't know who wrote it, I don't know who they were writing to, I don't know why they wrote it. Maybe we'll find out in another game. I did search high and low through this room to see if there were any clues, but nothing really seems to hint at who it was, aside from the fact that it does seem to be something digital. But I don't think it's one of the main animatronics in the game. After all, the main animatronics are the superstars, and they are very heavily monitored. It seems like the staff don't really let them out of their sight all that often, not before this point anyway. Maybe we'll find out who wrote this later on, but it's even creepier when you consider that there is a family of robots sat at a dining table right above. What happened to these robots? Why are they arranged like this? I don't know, but it's sure creepy to me. Number 9, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle references. So whenever you get a new message or a new mission, your Fazwatch makes this sound. Now you may or may not have recognized that sound. To me, it sounds very, very similar to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Heroes in a Half Shell, Turtle Power, Heroes in a Half Shell, and that is the only time I'm gonna sing in this video. So it seems like this is an Easter egg or a reference to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which would actually make a lot of sense if you think about it. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles were very popular in the 80s and early 90s. They were really a kid's show, but a lot of people really enjoyed them, and they were made into a lot of marketing materials, and they were very often used. They almost became their own little superstars in a way. I truly do believe that this entire game and this entire Pizzaplex is drawing on inspiration from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, just like previous games apparently took inspiration from Chuck E. Cheese. We don't have those in England, but I hear things. So it's kind of interesting that this newer version of the pizzeria, the Pizzaplex, is taking inspiration from another real-world popular series. But there are even more references than this. Obviously this is a Pizzaplex, and Freddy Fazbear's has always been known for its pizzas. Well, what are the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles' favourite food? You guessed it, pizza. Even looking at Monty, he seems to share a lot of design similarities with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Maybe in this universe the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles don't exist and this is like their version of it. Either way, I think these are some cool references and it's a nice little nod to some potential inspirations. Number 8, Princess Quest. So the Pizzaplex has plenty of areas that are essentially arcades. There's a lot of arcade machines and a number of the sections of the game are just arcades. But what you might not have known is that some of these arcade machines are playable, and one of them even ties into the story. Princess Quest has 3 playable machines in the game, one of which is kind of difficult to find. But if you play all 3, it does actually reveal a different ending and some new story for you. So Princess Quest seems to be this very classic style game, kind of like the old Zelda games, except you play as a princess made of golden light. Across the 3 games, the princess kind of has to save herself. She's assaulted by these shadowy figures, and by game 3, it's made pretty obvious that this is Vanessa or Vani. To unlock one of the secret endings, you have to find Vani's secret hideout. You need to also make sure that you've played Princess Quest 1 and 2, which can be found around the Pizzaplex. When you get to the end of the game and you go to leave, if you've found Vani's secret hideout, you get a new option. And if you've played both of the other games, by the time you do this, at the end you can play the 3rd game. The 3rd game shows Vanessa, and it seems to show Vanessa turning into Vani, and by the end of the game, we see this giant door which she unlocks. It seems very glitchy and digital. And I do think this could be a reference to Glitch Trap. So not only does this have some big connotations to the story, but you also end up with a very different ending if you manage to do all of this. Once this is all over, Vanessa and Gregory leave together, and Vanessa seems to be perfectly normal. Now, it's not entirely sure if Vani is a completely separate entity to Vanessa, or it's her split personality. I might eventually make a theory video about that because I have my own opinions. But either way, once you do these 3 games, it seems like Vanessa is free, which to me heavily implies that Vani is Vanessa's dark side. Either a dark side, or as some people have theorized, Vanessa under the effect of Glitch Trap. Either way, it's very interesting that to unlock this ending, you have to play through these games, and I really do think there are a lot of hints in these games to as why Vanessa and Vani are the way that they are. But like I say, I'm going to leave the rest of that interpretation for another video. Number 7. The numerous endings. Now this is a little bit of a weird one on the list because I haven't actually unlocked all of the endings myself, and you can't unlock all of the endings through one playthrough. Well, you can, it's just very, very difficult to do so. Now there are a number of different endings, I've just talked about one, but there are a bunch of different endings in the game and they all have very different outcomes for the Pizzaplex. But one ending which some people are calling the true ending is very interesting indeed. To unlock this one, you have to get access to the elevator, which I haven't been able to do on my playthrough unfortunately, so I'm going to be showing somebody else's gameplay here. But if you manage to get to this elevator, you can leave this way and you find one of the old pizzerias below the Pizzaplex. Now this was hinted throughout the game in the messages, but this absolutely is one of the original pizzerias, and the Pizzaplex was just built on top of it. This ending is very, very interesting indeed, and we see a few characters from older games turn up here. This ties this game into the overall universe, which absolutely confirms that it is in the same universe and it's not a spin-off or anything like that. But as I've said, there are multiple endings, and I've personally seen 6 of them. Maybe there are even more that we haven't found yet, but a couple of these endings require a little bit more effort than others, so I think it's safe to say that the 3-star endings are probably the most canon. Either way, it definitely gives you another reason to replay through the game, although I'm going to probably wait for a little bit before I do. Number 6. The golf minigame. So it appears like there were going to be multiple minigames inside of Security Breach, but one of these minigames can be found in Monty's area. If you find this arcade machine, you actually can play this full minigame that is a golf minigame, which is kind of interesting that they had a golf arcade machine in the middle of a crazy golf place, kind of weird, which is even mentioned in the message that it's kind of odd. But it's actually worth going through and playing this. This golf minigame, which is supposedly an arcade machine, shows plenty of references and callbacks to the previous games, including this one where you can see some of the classic antagonists from Five Nights at Freddy's. Not only that, this game's actually kind of fun. It's very similar to golf with your friends, except your friends are murderous animatronics. If you're a completionist or a theorist, I highly recommend going and checking this out, because there's a lot of information here, and there's some things that could potentially be hints for the rest of the game too. Or just go and play some fun golf, honestly either way. Number 5. Bonnie might still be alive. So one of the messages in the game explains that Bonnie has been decommissioned. They even go on to say that many children have been asking where Bonnie is, as Bonnie was many kids' favourite. The staff even had to start covering up the artwork in Bonnie's area to stop the kids asking about it. But we know that Bonnie was decommissioned in the parts and service area. But you might be wondering, why would they just kill off a fan favourite? It's possible that they actually didn't. Once you go to the parts and service area, we see these 3 rooms on the right that kind of look like holding cells. One of them has a door which requires level 10 access, which is the highest level of security you can find in the Pizzaplex. But what's really interesting about this though, is that they've also nailed the door shut. They really wanted to keep something in here, so clearly it was something very dangerous. Whatever it was though, managed to escape. the glass is shattered and there's nothing in this room. Who else could have escaped from here? Well, it could be a number of different characters, but really I think it would make most sense if this was Bonnie. After all, they said that they decommissioned Bonnie, but I personally think that Vani has been doing a lot of things behind the scenes that nobody knows about, which again, maybe I'll cover in another video. So what if Vani was the one who locked away Bonnie in here, saying that Bonnie was decommissioned, but really, Bonnie escaped? Where is Bonnie now? No idea, but I really hope they haven't killed off one of the fan favorites, and I hope that we find out, maybe in a DLC. Number 4, Vani Secrets. So there's a lot of debate and contention about exactly who Vani is. Some people believe that Vani is Vanessa's alter ego, some people think Vani is a completely separate entity, and honestly different endings of the game imply, well, both. But what we do know about Vani is that Vani has been causing chaos around the Pizzaplex for some time. For example, there have been a number of break-ins in the Pizzaplex, and there's also been some areas that appear to have been sabotaged. Furthermore, we see Vanessa, or again, potentially Vani, talking to Freddy in parts and service, implying that she has been doing experiments down here on the other animatronics, which honestly could explain why these animatronics hunt Gregory like he's an enemy. They might say they're trying to help, but they're clearly not. The game massively implies that Vani has been sabotaging things in this Pizzaplex for quite some time, but what's very interesting about it is that Vanessa doesn't seem to be aware of it. There's a number of messages that you can read in the game where Vanessa talks about break-ins and being very confused as to what went on. In fact, there is one break-in specifically mentions that somebody stole the prototype for the creepy little music men that you find in the vents in the game. Now this was most likely Vani, so why is Vanessa confused and why is she talking about there being no security footage? Now it's completely possible that Vanessa was just lying and this was to keep her cover, but it's also possible that she genuinely didn't know. If we remember back to the princess quest, as I said, it seems like this is implying that Vanessa has a dark side, and it's entirely possible that Vani is taking over, and when she does so, Vanessa has no memory of what she's been doing. This, combined with the fact that the animatronics seem to be far more deadly than they were intended to, definitely implies that Vani has been doing stuff here for a while. This also could explain why there is a bed with a room that says Vani in it. Seems odd that Vanessa would sleep here, and maybe she doesn't, maybe she works here, but maybe Vani sleeps here during the day. Again, entirely possible that her alter ego is taking over. Number 3, the Moondrop Suites. Now there are two characters in Security Breach that most of you will be familiar with, the Sun and the Moon, and again, let me be the first person to say, screw you, Moon. Both of these characters are really cool, but they're also incredibly annoying. But what is very interesting about this is not actually in the characters, but in the marketing around the characters. There's a lot of different marketing for both these characters with things like plushies and TV shows, but one thing that I noticed repeatedly around the game was these advertisements for the suites. There are these sun suites and then there are these moon suites. The sun suites, or the sun candy, are described as being energizing candy, which is a little bit weird if I'm being honest. Why would you want to give children sweets that already make them hyper and make them even more hyper? That seems odd. But even more odd and quite frankly disturbing are the Moondrop Suites, which are called nighttime suites or bedtime suites, one of the two. What I think this is implying is that these suites actually have a nefarious purpose. We know from the game that children have been going missing around this area, and it's heavily implied that Vani has been killing people, which again is not really that surprising. But what is surprising is that she might have been doing this with these suites. Think about it, why would the game advertise these suites that are bedtime suites? It's implying that these suites send you to sleep. It's really not a stretch to go from there to assume that these suites, maybe a different variation or maybe even laced with something, have been used to put people to sleep. Especially considering there are areas that look like they used to hold people. Really creepy room this one, even with full light, it doesn't seem right to me. It seems like a holding cell. But either way, we know that Vani has been killing people, and after all, she is a woman. It would be kind of difficult for her to take on a fully grown man. However, not if they were put to sleep first. It also could be entirely possible that she entices children in with sweets, but these sweets then put them to sleep, so she can do whatever she wants to do with them. We know this series is very, very dark, and we know that children have been murdered in past pizzerias, so this is really not a stretch, especially considering we know that children have gone missing in this area. It was a very subtle hint, but I really do think the game is hinting that this is what Vani was using to do her nefarious deeds. Just a whole new meaning on don't take candy from strangers, folks. Number 2, trolling the robots. As you progress through the game, you unlock more toys to use around the facility. For example, you get the Faz Blaster, which can blind animatronics. You also get this camera, which can do the same thing. But did you know that you can actually use these on a couple of things that you wouldn't have thought? For example, you can blind Freddy. He has a number of different voice lines when you do this, and he seems to be very upset by this fact. You can do the same thing to these cleaning robots as well, which is just kind of a nice touch. They sort of spin around on the spot, and it's very interesting that the developers went to this extent to put this in the game. It's not really the world's biggest secret, but I thought it was a nice little touch that the developers added. And yes, I am just a little bit evil.
I am your friend! Why though?
Number 1. The hidden discs. Once Freddy has the ocular upgrade, you can start to see items through walls. They are highlighted for you in this pink colour. But something that's a little bit more difficult to see even with the eye upgrade are these discs. Now, full disclosure, I haven't managed to collect all these discs yet because for some reason, once you've got the eye upgrade, you can't save anymore, which is just really, really dumb in my opinion. But if you manage to collect all of these discs and you also manage to collect all of Freddy's upgrades, there is an area you can access where you can start to play these discs. Now, these discs are interview tapes between Vanessa and a number of therapists. Now, while I haven't gone through them all yet, I've listened to some and they're very, very interesting. These are pretty much the hardest secret to get that we know of in the game so far, and I think that these are the ones that are really going to give us the true and hidden story of this game. But the fact that Vanessa was going through therapy, and we know that Vanessa didn't have the greatest upbringing, really does lend credence to the idea that Vani is just Vanessa's dark side, her alter ego. While it could be true that Glitchtrap or William Afton, or maybe both, are having an influence on Vani, that might not be all that there is, and in fact this might be the reason why she was so susceptible in the first place. It's clear that Vanessa has some sort of trauma that she's trying to escape from, and I do think that Vani is a physical manifestation of that. But to get all of this, you need to collect all of these discs, which are honestly very difficult to get, or just go and check out somebody's YouTube video. So there we have it. Those are 10 things you might have missed in Five Nights at Freddy Security Breach. There are way more things I could probably talk about, and there are still plenty of secrets for me to find, I am sure, but this is all I have before I go on my Christmas break. So thank you very much for watching, have a fantastic holiday, and I will see you next time.